When was the last time you stopped, looked at your life, and asked yourself, is my anxiety just a symptom, or is it a sign that I'm ignoring something that I already know I need to change? Have you ever found yourself wondering if anxiety is really the problem or if it's just a reflection of something bigger, something deeper? We always hear that anxiety is just a condition, something we have to deal with or learn to overcome. But what if it were more than that? What if it were a warning that you're disconnecting from your own truth? It's not just about the mind or the body, it's about the soul. This affects what you have inside, what you carry, and often we are so focused on finding immediate relief that we forget to look at the real problem. So I ask you, do you have the courage to stop and face what this anxiety is trying to show you? Or will you keep pushing it aside, trying to put out the fire without realizing the house is burning? You feel it, don't you? The urge to just run away from the discomfort. But what if instead you had the courage to dig deep, face that feeling head on, and understand what it's really trying to tell you? The truth is, no one lives without pain. We all experience it in some way. But there's a stark difference between the pain of growing up and the suffering of living paralyzed by anxiety. You feel it, don't you? That weight, that feeling of being trapped in a cycle where the pain seems to never end. The pain of growing up can be challenging, but it's also a sign that we're reaching for something bigger, something truer. On the other hand, the suffering caused by anxiety is different. It doesn't propel us forward. It doesn't take us anywhere. It just paralyzes us. And the big question is, why are you still in this cycle? Why are you still stuck in a suffering that seems to have no end? Most people aren't anxious because they have a chemical problem. They're anxious because they know, deep down, that they're living below their potential. And this eats away at them. This is the real dilemma. It's not the anxiety itself, but what it reveals. How much you've been ignoring about yourself. How far you've been distancing yourself from who you truly could be. The suffering that comes from anxiety isn't just a reaction to the external world. It's a response from within, from a part of you that knows something is wrong. Do you feel it? Maybe you don't know exactly what it is, but you have the feeling that something is out of place, as if your life is simply revolving around an inauthentic version of yourself. When you look in the mirror, do you see who you really are? Or do you just see the facade you've been putting on to try to fit in? It suffocates you. And the more you ignore this pain, the more it grows, the more it consumes. It seems strange, doesn't it? But pain, if faced, has the power to transform us. Not in the easy way, but in the most authentic way. When you embrace the pain of growing up, you find something anxiety could never offer. A deeper truth about who you really are. Did you know you're in control? You have more power over this than you think. Anxiety is often a reflection of what you've been avoiding. It's a sign that you've moved away from what truly matters, what truly makes sense. And when this happens, anxiety sets in as a constant reminder that something needs to change. That's where the big revelation begins. The truth no one talks about. Anxiety isn't the end. It's just a reflection of what you haven't yet faced. Maybe you're afraid of what you'll discover. Maybe you're afraid of realizing that the life you're living isn't the one you truly want. But believe me, if you keep running away, it will keep chasing you, and the price will be higher than you can imagine. This pain, this feeling of being trapped is real, but it can be transformed, and you hold the key to it. We're not here to minimize suffering, nor to ignore it. The goal is to understand what it truly means, because when you begin to understand the source of your suffering, you begin to gain control over it, and, most importantly, you begin to free yourself. Jordan Peterson, one of the greatest contemporary thinkers, teaches us something profound. You don't run away from suffering. You choose the kind of suffering you're willing to endure. That changes everything, doesn't it? The idea that suffering is inevitable can be liberating, because instead of seeing anxiety as a dead end, you can see it as a choice. The choice to face what deep down you know needs to change. This quote from Peterson is a clear reminder. You can't simply run away from what bothers you. Running away often only postpones confrontation. You can try to ignore the pain, but it will return in one form or another. And more than that, it will intensify until you can no longer ignore it. Peterson challenges us to look at suffering differently. He teaches us that by facing pain head-on, rather than running away from it, we find the path to our evolution. It's not easy, it's not quick, but it's the only path that leads to true freedom. He also says, either you suffer from not facing what you need to, or you suffer to become who you're meant to be. And that's the crux of it. When you choose to face your fears, to face the difficulties life presents you, you are in some way deciding to become someone greater. If you don't, then the suffering will be deeper, heavier, because it comes from what you're avoiding, from what you're refusing to face. This idea can be scary, right? Because it requires courage. It requires action. We can't expect anxiety to simply disappear if we don't make the decision to act. But what Peterson is saying is that anxiety is not a condemnation. It's a door that, when opened, reveals opportunities for growth. But to walk through that door, courage is required. Courage to confront one's demons, courage to look at one's fears and weaknesses, courage to grow, because by doing so you transform. You escape the cycle of anxiety and enter the cycle of self-knowledge and overcoming. But before you move forward, stop for a moment and reflect. Are you willing to choose this kind of suffering? Are you ready to face what needs to be faced? Anxiety is a cry from your soul, asking you to stop putting off the changes you know need to be made. If you keep hiding, it will continue to follow you. But if you decide to face what's bothering you, anxiety will lose its power over you. You'll find that by carrying the right weight, you're no longer crushed by it. On the contrary, it will strengthen you. Don't fool yourself into thinking it'll be easy. It never will be, but it will be true. And in the end, the truth is what will truly set you free. You've been taught to believe that feeling anxious is a sign of weakness, that if you're scared or insecure, something's wrong with you. You need to be strong, they say. But what if it's actually the opposite? What if your anxiety isn't a sign of weakness, but rather a reflection of a strength you haven't yet recognized? What if, instead of seeing anxiety as something to be feared, you started seeing it as an alarm from your soul, screaming, "Wake up, you're lying to yourself." Society teaches us that we should be immune to fear, discomfort, and anxiety. But what would happen if our relationship with these feelings changed? What would happen if, instead of fighting anxiety, we used it as a guide, as a signal that something needs to change within us? Have you ever stopped to think that anxiety can be one of the most powerful forces for your growth? Because it doesn't appear out of nowhere. It arises when there's a disconnect between what you're experiencing and what you know to be true for you. When you distance yourself from your essence, anxiety appears, urging you to get back on track. It's therefore an opportunity, not a sentence. But this requires a radical shift in how you think about it. You need to stop seeing it as an enemy to be defeated and start treating it as an ally. It seems strange, doesn't it? But anxiety is a reflection of your internal struggle. You're in conflict with something inside you, something that needs to be confronted. The real battle isn't against anxiety itself, but against what it's telling you about yourself. And you'll only win this battle when you accept what it's telling you. Peterson teaches us, resistance to evil is what makes it worse. When we resist our own pain, when we try to ignore it or run from it, we are only feeding the cycle. But if we start asking ourselves, why am I feeling this? What is it trying to tell me? Anxiety stops being a problem and becomes a path to transformation. This is the crucial point. By changing the way we view anxiety, we begin to find the courage to change our lives. You're not fighting an invisible monster. You're fighting the parts of yourself that don't yet have the courage to face the truth. So instead of running away from anxiety, how about you stop, breathe, and listen to what it has to say? It can be uncomfortable, even painful, but by doing so, you begin to understand that true strength comes from acceptance, not resistance. You have the strength to face what's inside you, and when you do, anxiety will lose its grip on you. You'll no longer be its slave, but the master of your own life. Anxiety isn't just mental, it's existential. Have you ever stopped to think about this? Anxiety isn't something that can simply be solved with quick fixes or magic formulas. No, it's a reflection of something deeper, a disconnection from your own truth. When you feel this pressure, this knot in your chest, it's not just a sign that your mind is overloaded. It's not just a reflection of stress or nervousness. It's a reflection of how disconnected you've become from who you truly are. When we talk about anxiety, We're talking about something that goes beyond the mind. We're talking about an existential pain, the feeling of being disconnected from something essential within you, something that, deep down, you know you need to address, but are afraid to face. Have you ever stopped to think about what's really bothering you? What have you been ignoring that's now coming back to confront you? Anxiety often arises when we try to avoid an important part of ourselves. It could be a decision you've postponed, a truth you haven't accepted, a part of your life that's out of whack. It could be related to work, relationships, or dreams you've put aside. But whatever it is, anxiety is calling you to confront it, to reconnect with your truth. When you feel anxiety, it's almost like a warning sign. Your soul is trying to tell you something. You're ignoring something, you're off track. It's hard, isn't it? It's much easier to keep ignoring it, to keep putting it off. But that uncomfortable feeling won't go away until you decide to do something about it. It's normal to be afraid to look within and find something you don't want to see. But believe me, facing this fear is the only path to freedom. Self-knowledge doesn't come without discomfort. It requires courage to face what you've been avoiding, courage to expose yourself to what's hidden within you. Peterson speaks about this very clearly. He reminds us that if you don't connect with your truth, the suffering will be even greater. We are not here to live a life of appearances. We are not here to follow what others expect of us. We are here to find our own path, to live according to who we truly are, what we truly want. And that, yes, requires a profound confrontation with ourselves. I'm not saying it will be easy, nor am I saying it will be quick, but by listening to yourself, by hearing what anxiety has to tell you, you begin to open a space for transformation. The truth, however uncomfortable, is always liberating. It doesn't matter what you discover. What matters is that you gave yourself the opportunity to truly know yourself, to understand the roots of your anxiety, and from there, make the necessary changes. Anxiety won't disappear overnight, but as you start listening to what it has to say, you'll begin to realize that it no longer holds the same power over you. It will no longer be a constant threat. It will become an ally, a signal that something needs to be done. You'll begin to use anxiety as a guide to self-discovery. It will no longer control you. On the contrary, you'll be in control, because now you understand what's behind it. The journey to self-knowledge is one of the most challenging, but also one of the most powerful. There are no shortcuts. There are no easy answers. But it is in the process of listening within that you find true transformation. And when you listen to yourself, when you finally understand yourself, you will realize that anxiety no longer has the same power. It will simply be a reminder to keep you on the path to your truth. No longer a monster, but a sign that you are on the right path. Jordan Peterson says, "Face the chaos. That's where your potential lies." This seemingly simple phrase carries immense power. Facing chaos doesn't mean pursuing a goal without planning. It doesn't mean throwing yourself headfirst into something you don't understand. Facing chaos is, in fact, an invitation to look at what you've been avoiding. When we talk about chaos, we're talking about all those parts of your life that you refuse to organize. Those fears, insecurities, decisions you've put off for so long. Chaos isn't just external confusion. It begins within us, in the places we don't want to face, in the areas of our lives that remain disorganized, in the thoughts we'd rather not listen to. Running away from anxiety is a way to reinforce chaos. The more you avoid facing problems, the bigger they become. They grow inside you, turning into monsters that can eventually destroy everything you love. You can't control everything, of course, but what you can control is your response to chaos. You can choose to face the storm or hide from it, and that's where the big change comes in. Peterson says that when you run away from suffering and chaos, you're moving away from your true strength. The only way to truly grow is by stepping into the eye of the storm and facing what's there. There's no point in trying to get rid of pain or anxiety without first understanding what it's really telling you. Many people try to eliminate anxiety with distractions, with escapes, but in the meantime it builds up, becoming a greater burden every day. But what Peterson teaches us is that the only way to overcome anxiety is not to run from it, but to go through it, looking head-on at what scares you, facing your fears with courage, because it is in this confrontation that you find your true potential. Imagine a human being who never faces their fears. They live on the margins of their own life, unable to evolve. But when you choose to enter the chaos, when you choose to look at what scares you, you begin to grow. Chaos is where your greatest lessons, your greatest opportunities for transformation lie. True confrontation is not the absence of fear, but action despite it. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting even when fear is there, when anxiety is beating strong within you. Of course, by doing this, you won't have all the answers immediately. Not everything will be resolved quickly. Chaos isn't something that disappears after being faced once. But each time you enter this unknown space, you become stronger. You begin to realize that fear doesn't define you. Anxiety is no longer a prison, but a gateway to self-knowledge and growth. And that's what happens when you face the shadow within yourself. You begin to realize that you're no longer a slave to your own fears. Anxiety loses its power over you. You become lighter, stronger, more authentic. This is the paradox of anxiety. The more you try to avoid it, the more it grows. But by facing it, you break the cycle and begin to gain control over your life. You stop being a hostage to your own mind and start to control your own destiny. Facing chaos is, therefore, a choice that requires courage but brings with it the reward of profound growth. Life won't get easier, but you will become stronger. We are not here to live without challenges, but to face them head-on, with courage and determination. When you accept chaos, you begin to realize it's not your enemy, it's your teacher. And believe me, you have everything you need to learn. Anxiety is like an invisible monster, something you pretend not to see. But the more you ignore it, the more it grows. It starts small, like a seed, something you might even think you can push aside because it doesn't seem that big or important. But as time passes, that seed begins to transform. It becomes something more real, heavier, more difficult to control, until, suddenly, you realize that this monster you thought was nothing has become something much bigger than you could have imagined. This monster is anxiety. It doesn't appear suddenly, but grows silently, feeding on what you don't want to face. When you ignore it, it grows stronger. When you avoid dealing with it, it grows. And when it becomes large enough, it can begin to consume everything around you, everything you value most, your relationships, your health, your dreams. Now, imagine if, instead of ignoring it, you decided to confront this monster. Imagine if, instead of hiding, you looked it in the face, with the courage to face what it represents. Because, in the end, this monster is just a part of yourself. It's not something external, something that came from outside to destroy you. It's a creation of your own mind, a reflection of what you're afraid to face, what you've been avoiding. The more you ignore anxiety, the more it grows. The more you run away, the stronger it grows. The monster you don't want to face becomes increasingly difficult to defeat. But if you stop running away and start facing what it represents, you begin to take control of the situation. It will no longer be an invisible, uncontrollable monster. It will become something you can face, something you can control. And most importantly, you will realize that it no longer has the power over you that you once imagined. This invisible monster metaphor is a powerful way to understand anxiety. Often, the fear of anxiety, the fear of what it can do to us, is far worse than the anxiety itself. When we face anxiety, it loses its power. It loses control over us. Because instead of running away, we are taking a stand. We are deciding to no longer be hostage to what we feel. We are deciding to take control of our lives, even when fear and anxiety try to dominate us. But facing it doesn't mean the absence of fear. The fear will still be there. The anxiety will continue to linger, but you'll learn to deal with it. You'll realize that the monster isn't as big as you thought, that by facing it head-on, it loses its power over you. The monster of anxiety loses its strength when you decide to look at it without fear, when you finally decide to face what's inside you. Make no mistake, this doesn't mean anxiety will disappear overnight, but by facing it head-on, you begin to regain control. Anxiety loses its grip on you, and instead of being something that paralyzes you, it becomes something you can handle. Life will continue to be challenging, and anxiety may even return at times, but you will have the tools and courage to face it. When you face anxiety as this invisible monster, you become stronger, and over time, You'll realize that instead of running away, you've learned to live with it, to tame it. And that in itself is already a great victory. Because in the end, the monster wasn't as big as you imagined. The real challenge was believing you had no control over it. And by realizing you do, you've already won the biggest battle of all. And maybe today is that day. The day to stop pretending everything is okay. The day to start living with purpose, even if you're trembling inside. The day to finally face reality head on. No more excuses, no more delays. Because courage, my friend, is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting, despite it. Have you ever thought about how much you've been running away from what's bothering you? How much you've been ignoring that inner voice screaming for change? Anxiety is calling you to an awakening. And if you keep hiding from it, if you keep running away from what it's trying to show you, you'll stay trapped in this cycle. But what if I told you that you have the power to turn the key today? The power to take a step, even if it's the smallest, but the first step towards freedom. Sounds scary, doesn't it? Because when you commit to change, when you decide to face your shadows, you know the journey will be painful. But here's the trick. You don't need a giant leap all at once. What you need are small steps. Every choice you make to face what bothers you, every decision to stop running away, is a step in the right direction. Imagine what your life would be like if you finally took that step. What if you saw anxiety as something you could overcome, not something controlling you? I know it's not easy, but you have immense strength within you that you may not even know you possess. Change begins when you decide to no longer hide behind excuses, when you decide that anxiety will no longer dictate your choices. Because anxiety is not your enemy. It's a reflection of what you haven't yet done. It's a reflection of what you've been avoiding, of the truths you're afraid to face. Now, think about it. If you continue to live this way, running away from what bothers you, what will you lose? You'll lose more time, more precious moments that could be dedicated to living the life you truly desire. You'll continue living on autopilot without truly realizing how much your life is being dominated by fear and procrastination. But what if you made the decision right now to make a different choice? What if you decided to face what anxiety is showing you, to stop running away and start taking action? I know the fear will still be there. I know the insecurities won't disappear overnight. But every step you take into the unknown, every choice you make to face what scares you, will make you stronger. It will make you more capable of living a true life. A life where anxiety doesn't control you, but where you take the reins. Believe me, this is the turning point. Today is the day you decide to take a step toward transformation. It doesn't have to be a big step. The important thing is that it's a sincere step, a courageous step. Because in the end, you'll realize that it's not the absence of fear that makes you brave. It's the ability to act despite fear. And I'll tell you more. When you start taking action, when you decide to face what needs to be faced, anxiety will begin to lose the power it had over you. It won't be easy, but it will be real. And that, my friend, is worth so much more. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it will be true. And that's worth much more. Because true transformation, the kind that comes from the depths of the soul, doesn't happen overnight. It's not like a magic trick where everything is resolved in the blink of an eye. No, my friend, true transformation takes time, courage, and above all, action. You won't wake up tomorrow and realize your anxiety has magically disappeared. Change isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. And every step you take, no matter how small, will bring you closer to the person you know you can become. I'm not promising you a life without anxiety, because that doesn't exist. What I promise you is something much deeper, a life where you're no longer held hostage by anxiety, where you, despite it, still have the courage to move forward. Imagine what your life would be like if you made decisions every day that put you in control, instead of being controlled by anxiety. Imagine waking up knowing you're facing challenges, confronting your fears, and taking control of your life. This won't be easy. It won't be a smooth journey. It will require you to look in the mirror and face the truth, even when it's painful. If this conversation has clarified anything within you, give back with whatever you can. Click a subscription. It shows that it's worth continuing. But that's what makes true transformation so powerful. We're not here to create an idealized version of ourselves. We're here to become more authentic, stronger, and more present in our own lives. And as you do, you'll find that anxiety loses its grip on you. It will still be there, of course, but it will no longer dominate you. It will become just a part of your journey, something you can deal with, something that doesn't define who you are. This transformation won't happen all at once, but it begins with a single step, a step toward truth, a step toward the courage to be who you truly are. And over time, you'll realize that, instead of being dominated by anxiety, you begin to live more authentically. You begin to see that true freedom comes not from the absence of fear, but from the ability to act despite it. And this will transform your life in ways you may never have imagined. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anxiety will disappear. What I'm saying is that you will learn to manage it in a way that strengthens you, empowers you, and allows you to live with more purpose. Anxiety will continue to crop up, but it will no longer control you. You will be the master of your life, no longer a spectator. And when you look back, you'll realize it wasn't an easy journey, but it was a true journey. Because in the end, that's what really matters. It's not the shortcuts or the quick fixes. What really matters is the courage to face what's inside you and the willingness to grow. And that, my friend, is what will lead you to true transformation. You don't overcome anxiety by trying to feel better. You overcome it by becoming a better person. This is the key. It's not about seeking immediate relief, nor about trying to run away from anxiety in the hope that it will go away on its own. That's not how true transformation happens. True transformation happens when you decide to stop running away and start confronting anxiety head-on. And when you do, you begin to realize something profound. It's not anxiety that defines who you are. It's not fear. It's not challenges or difficulties. What defines who you are is what you choose to do with it all. Jordan Peterson wisely reminds us that overcoming anxiety doesn't come from the relentless pursuit of a better feeling. It doesn't come from trying to ignore fear or suppress uncomfortable emotions. Overcoming anxiety comes from something much more powerful and transformative, becoming a better person. And that doesn't mean achieving perfection. It doesn't mean being immune to fear or anxiety. It simply means choosing to become stronger every day, choosing to act despite the internal challenges you face. When you look at anxiety differently, when you see it not as an enemy but as an opportunity, things begin to change. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of fear, but as someone in a continuous process of growth. Because in the end, anxiety is not the enemy. The real enemy is the fear that paralyzes you. The real enemy is the idea that you can't change. But that's not true. You can change. You can take control of your life and begin to shape your reality. True overcoming doesn't come from trying to feel better. It comes from the courage to do what needs to be done, even when fear is present, even when anxiety creeps in. This is what will transform you. Every step you take toward self-knowledge, every time you face what bothers you and act despite it, you will become a better person. Change doesn't happen all at once. There are no shortcuts to self-knowledge and overcoming obstacles. But with each small step, each moment you confront yourself, anxiety loses its grip on you, and you begin to live the life you always knew you could live. Not a life without fear, but a life where fear doesn't control your choices. Anxiety will continue to arise, as it does for all of us. But by facing anxiety with courage and purpose, you will become someone who is no longer defined by it. You will become someone who chooses how to respond, someone who chooses their path, regardless of fear or insecurity. And that is true power. So, don't seek the absence of anxiety. Seek empowerment in the face of it. See it as a reflection of your ability to evolve, to grow, to be a better person every day. And when you do, you'll realize that, despite the anxiety, you found something much more powerful, the courage to live your truth. To be who you truly are, to no longer allow yourself to be paralyzed by the chains of fear. If this spoke to you, share it, because maybe someone you know is living on the edge, just waiting for that phrase. The truth is, many of us go through moments when anxiety seems to engulf us. The difference between those who break free and those who keep fighting is the courage to listen and act. Sometimes, all we need is to know that someone else has been there, that someone has faced the same chaos and emerged stronger. Maybe you're in that same situation right now, trying to make sense of what you're feeling. trying to find a way to live without feeling paralyzed by fear. And that's what I want to tell you. You're not alone. We've all been there in some way, and there's no shame in that. True power comes when you decide to stand up and take action, no matter how you feel. It's acting despite anxiety, uncertainty, and fear. You have within you the strength to overcome whatever blocks you. It doesn't matter what the world tells you, or what the voices in your head whisper about your limitations. What matters is what you choose to do from now on. And if you can share this message, maybe it will help someone else take the first step too. Jordan Peterson reminds us of something very important. The right words at the right time can save a life. It's no exaggeration. Sometimes that's exactly what someone needs to hear to take that step toward truth, action, self-knowledge. And maybe today your presence here is that right phrase for someone. Maybe you'll be the turning point in someone's life by sharing this, by showing that it's possible to live courageously while dealing with anxiety. Because life isn't about being perfect, it's about being true. And by doing so, you become stronger. When you allow yourself to be honest with your pain, you begin to discover a strength you didn't know you had. Every time you face your fears, every time you face anxiety head-on, you get closer to who you truly are, closer to who you were meant to be. So, share this with someone you love, someone who might need to hear this message. Because sometimes, the words of encouragement we receive at the right time can be what helps us get through the darkest night and guide us toward the dawn. And finally, remember this: anxiety doesn't define who you are. It's not what you feel that defines you, but what you choose to do with those feelings. You have the ability to become who you want to be, and every choice you make toward your truth will bring you closer to that. So, if you're ready to do this, start now. Take the first step. Face your anxiety. Face your fears. And remember, by doing so, you're becoming a better person. Transformation begins with you, and you have the power to choose to live the life you truly desire.